Well, again, it's difficult with print journalism. What I'm finding is that I'm overwhelmed by my electronic media. I'm starting to be overwhelmed by stuff coming into my email and into my phone, and I almost don't read it. It's like, and it's interesting. This was a women's press group I was at. The editor of a major magazine in Chicago talked about the phenomenon of sit back and read and lean in. When you're on your phone, you're leaning in, you're kind of intense, but when you're sitting back, you're reading for your fun. And that's what I hope to do more of with StreetWise. Let it be that kind of publication where people can sit back and read it for fun. Now the problem is, how do we get out there? It's not quite like in Europe, where I think people take more public transportation, so they've got that time to just chill. I mean, if you're in a Lyft or an Uber or a CTA, you can or Metro, you can chill and read. So when do people chill? You know, when when do we just slow down and kind of take it in? So I think we still need to be print, but there may be some way we also need to do electronic. We're trying to wonder if there isn't a way we can give readers an electronic version so that they can still pay something to the vendor. And I mean, that's we don't know. You know, I don't want to, that's again business plan, and I'm not all privy to that. But yeah, I'm not sure. It's a matter of, I still think when you have that voice and you make people curious about what you're going to come up with, I think we can still be relevant one way or another. I mean, when people are like, oh, I wonder what they have this week, that's what I want to get more of. Oh, that surprise element, you know? Okay, so it's interesting. Some of the papers, and I'm not going to say which papers, some of them are they're talking about international news or they're talking about crime, and it's like, I don't care. I read this story already. I know about crime. I read it. And so I'm a classically trained journalist, but the papers I was reading when I was a kid, and then when I was downstate in Dixon, Illinois, which was Reagan's hometown, the paper had 107% circulation. Like, what? Because some people took it at home and some people took it at the office. But the paper was more like Facebook. And even when I was growing up, I remember the paper was more like Facebook. We're talking about Chicago papers. I remember they would print stuff like the top student in every high school and what their aspirations were. Now you're like, this is Chicago. And that's like a small town attitude. But yet, even for me, I was growing up and I'm looking at all these kids going, wow. And my father would say, well, this girl looks like she's really a good person. I'm like, Daddy, you're just looking at her face, you know. But what he meant was she looked studied, or she looked like she was caring. You can tell that from people's faces. So, and the papers downstate, they would be talking about, like, the ladies' home extension was having a meeting, and it was about certain kind of cooking, and it was relevant, you know, because it was actually instructive to people. But it touched their lives because they were actually having meetings about this. I mean, I actually had to do stork reports. They would go to the hospital, and so the babies had been born, and I would leave the forms there for people to fill out, and they'd talk about who the grandparents were and this and that. And you would think that was like, what? But even I was doing histories for my high school alumni group. There was a story about somebody in the 40s or 50s. She was a girl, and she walked into her house and saw a burglar. And she chased him, and she jumped him, and she sat on him. And the story's talking about she was a member of the Girls Athletic Association. This was no big deal for her. And you would think this is a crazy story, but you know what? It was funny. And it was interesting. And so I think we've kind of gotten too sophisticated with journalism. I mean, if you actually provide stories that are like deep down there and reflect people's lives, they're interesting. I mean, I'm not going to say it's exactly got to be like Facebook. That's a little extreme. But I think you understand what I'm saying. I mean, it's got to be like oh my God, that gives me a perspective I didn't have. So print, yes, I am worried about print. I should be reading news all the time, and I don't. Something has happened where I'm shutting down, and I'm only taking in when I want to. I shut my phone off when I'm busy. I'm limiting stuff because otherwise you're assaulted all the time. You got to focus on what you need.
That's true.
You know, really, I mean, you're on all the time and people are just assaulting you and, excuse me, when do I write? You know, when do I do my own research, call people and write? So there's this moment where I'm very focused. And that's the same thing I'm wondering if newspapers need to do. And I mean, I don't even look at TV if I don't even always watch the 10 o'clock news, you know? I watch the 11 o'clock BBC news because it's always, like last night there was something about how China is building up its navy the way we were in World War II. And they've got now the biggest navy in the world, but maybe not as well trained and well equipped as the United States, but they're moving on it. And it's like, whoa, you know, what do we need to do to keep up? Do we need to be more of a nation? So it's like I only watch the things that I select. I don't let myself get bombarded with everything minute by minute because it doesn't pay. I'm focused on me. And so I'm wondering, I guess I need to make sure that StreetWise is relevant so that people make room for us. And that's where I'm at now. I'm kind of trying to go at it harder in a new way. As I say, more not just what I think people want, but trying to let them have a voice so that they want it. That's really key. It's not about what you think, it's what people want. That's what capitalism is really about, people defining their needs and you meeting it. And so I've got to go harder that way.